Yo, this is the Wrestling Machine, Tyson Dukes, and you're listening to the Ed Fowler Podcast. Also available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and if you're not listening to this podcast, maybe you should.
You're listening to the best wrestling podcast in the UK. This is The Edward Fowler Show.
I'm doing all right. It's kind of a calm before the storm here. It's Sunday, early evening. We got a big week ahead of us here in Louisville and OVW, both with wrestling and promotions and behind the scenes business. So get a little relaxation time in right now. Yeah, no problem, man. It was a matter of scheduling. Like I said, a lot going on here. And it was just one of those things I just unfortunately got pushed to the back burner and kind of forgot about our correspondence. So I apologize that happened. Uh, it's an interesting question. That it's on my mind. I always appreciate, any sort of fan support that you get in this business, because without fans, there really is no pro wrestling business. No one's buying tickets and no one's, watching the matches or buying the merchandise. and I think there's like some unfinished business there for me in Impact Wrestling, and I think right now is a very interesting time for them in the company. Since Anthem purchased them a few years ago, a lot has changed. I think for a minute there, people might have been a little bit scared that what's happening now. TNA is going through another change. But I think they've done a decent job of righting the ship and staying a course while also introducing some new talent and building some new talent, and then bringing in some established talent like guys like Rhino and a Brian Cage, who's been around outside and found a lot of success for himself outside of Impact. He's finding success in Impact now. But I think my time in Impact was just very, tumultuous, and I don't think it had a lot to do with me. I think there was a lot of turmoil in the office and the booking process, a lot of power plays going on, and it affected the product. I think it affected a lot of people's mentality there. I thought I could see myself doing very well there back in 2013 through 2015, and even into 16. It just, again, there was so much going on behind the scenes, and it's been well documented, by the fans, via social media, and talked about by, your wrestling journalists and websites. So, and they'll watch a guy like me who's a legit, true heavyweight, and has been influenced by a lot of the dominant heavyweights from, the All Japan era, that I would fit well in with guys like Rhino or Brian Cage, and some of the other larger guys that they have coming into there, as well as some of the smaller guys, in their junior heavyweights, if you want to call them that, or even guys like a Sami Callihan, who obviously has been doing, phenomenal stuff on the indies and is one of the most talked about wrestlers, but not the biggest guy, and that's not a knock on Sami, but I think there's something there. There's interest, and it's intrigued to see what that matchup would look like if he got in there with Jay Bradley, or what would Rhino and Jay Bradley look like as a match. So I think that's where it comes from. I think, people stepped back and kind of thought about it and was like, wow, there's some intrigue there match-wise. So, I'm technically, if you want to call it, a free agent. I have an agreement with OVW that doesn't prohibit me from working anywhere else or appearing on any sort of, television program or content for another wrestling company. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And again, thank you to somebody who just put out that. Thank you to Jamie Hamlet, who is in the YouTube chat room right now. Thank you for tuning in. He just let me know that you could not hear me for a few minutes. I apologize for that, but we did get your question, and they could hear you fine. They couldn't hear me until now, so they can hear me now. This is great. They got to hear the host. That's not good, is it? You made some interesting points there, about how you're now, you can appear on any TV show you want to if you wanted to. And recently, OVW have now got a partnership again with Impact Wrestling. So, there's people rumoring out there, your fans rumoring that you could get put back onto Impact Wrestling. Would that be good for you? Do you want to return to Impact again, or do you think you've been there, you've done it, you got a ticket, you got some merchandise, you got some sunglasses from them, you've done what you need to do there and move on, or do you want to go back and prove something to them?
You know what? I kind of look at it as it's like it's the same name, but it's a very different company than it was 2-3 years ago. So what almost appeared to be scorched earth at one point, if you want to call it that, after one regime after another and another, I think it feels very much like a different company. It feels very much like a different than it was a few years ago. So no, as a professional, I'm not opposed to putting my talents and plying my trade to anyone that is willing to give me the platform. So I would definitely be interested in going back. That was talked about. Scott was actually very instrumental with sending me to Pro Wrestling Noah about a year and a half ago, early 2018. So they know who I am. I'm thought well of. And yeah, I think there's something there for me. I think there's something there, and also other companies like an MLW or an NWA that's resurgent, or even like a Ring of Honor. or going back overseas. I think, a guy like me right now, my style and what I bring to the table, there isn't an abundance of. Nowadays, and it's not a knock, it's just the way the wrestling business has shifted over the course of time that, 20 years ago, guys over 6'2" and 250 pounds were everywhere. Now those guys, like the legit heavyweights who are both athletic and good wrestlers, they're few and far between now. And if you really think about it, like, I think that's why a guy like Rhino has been so prolific in extending his career and having a great career for himself, is because he fits that mold, and there's not a lot of guys like him out there anymore. So no, I mean, I could see myself, like I said, at Impact. I could see myself in an MLW, NWA. It's just a matter of what's the best fit for me when it comes down to what is actual opportunity, what matches are presented, and of course the business end of things when it comes down to, dollars and cents and, signatures on paper.
Gotcha, no problem. And I like how you mentioned about bringing in the Major League Wrestling aspect. Not many people really mention MLW when I bring him on this show, so it's good to have somebody actually acknowledging that they exist, and same with the NWA as well. Not many people mention the NWA here on the Fowler show, so again, you're the second person to mention the NWA on this very show. Of course, last Monday, I think it was now, Ryan, he mentioned the NWA as well. So, some great, there's a lot of TV now. There's a lot of companies, big companies getting on TV nowadays, like OVW, making their mark in the TV world again. MLW, NWA coming back into TV now for the first time in many years. Do you think this is all good competition, or do you think this may end badly for all these companies?
Well, no, I don't think it's going to end badly for anybody. The one thing I do see is we have a lot of wrestling content that's getting pushed to the wrestling fan, as far as, if you think about it, we can go down the list of, Impact, Ring of Honor, MLW, NWA shortly here. AEW obviously is getting a lot of attention, and rightfully so, from like the money they're throwing around and getting on the TNT, and of course you have WWE, and that's just here and within the North America territory or area. The Japanese and the Mexican companies as well have, but a lot of the stuff here, it's very similar style of wrestling that you see from company to company, even some of the same talent from company to company. So what I see going on is a lot of companies, essentially a lot of promotions, trying to cut themselves a bigger piece of the wrestling fans' attention. Now, I know people as wrestling fans that watch anything they can get their hands on or get their eyes in front of their eyes because they're just huge fans. Now, is that everybody? Probably not, because people have jobs and families and everything else that, entails in life. So it's my concern, or what I find interesting, is which one is going to break out of the pack and really get the large attention from the wrestling fan. And then number two, which I think is even more important actually, is probably which ones of the pack is going to start bringing in new fans.
Yeah.
The people who has been might not be a diehard wrestling fan now and involved in the internet and the social media aspect on it, but wrestling fans are typically 18 to 34-year-old males. Well, that's a large group of people, and people on that age, they've got friends. Maybe they're having a family and children, or they're starting that process in their life. Like, which company are they going to watch with their kids or their significant other, or bring to the matches and allow a product to grow outside of the current wrestling fan marketplace, I guess. And I think that's a big trick of it right now. I think probably these companies are asking themselves that, and if they're not, maybe they should. But I think that's going to be the interesting story going forward, is who's generating new fans, who's bringing in people that aren't necessarily watching WWE or following a mega company like a New Japan that, you know, is creating new fans and bringing in new dollars because of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have to agree with you there, and it's all about bringing new fans and to create more of a what you call it, making it care more again, like it was back in the 90s as well. Bringing it back to popular again, as it was in the 90s. So it's all about trying to attract the newer fans and get them involved and get them interested in the product again. But back to you. Go on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think another thing too with that same process we just talked about is, in what you just said about the 90s really clicked something in my head. If you think about it then, we're closing in on 25 years ago.
Crikey, long time ago.
And you had WWEF, you had WCW, ECW, and then you had, 2 or 3 major Japanese companies, 2 major Puerto Rico companies, and a couple major companies in Mexico, and then even in Europe, that all had television clearance or had some sort of television program. But where I'm going with this is each one of those TV shows, although it was pro wrestling, it was very identifiable, and each one was very different. The way the production was, the style of the matches, the approach to pro wrestling was slightly different. And that's one thing I think I would like to see pro wrestling going forward with all these companies is maybe widening or changing their approach to where each company feels maybe a little bit different than the other ones. So it's truly a different flavor as opposed to a very similar pace match or a very similar style match. You're going to get something different from company to company.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for bringing that to our attention there about the 90s. Of course, I didn't want to interrupt you there, so I just thought I'll let you do what you want to do because this is your show. But as I was going to say before you made that comment, was that back to you about OVW. Who has been fun to work with so far in OVW since in your tender there, and is there anybody you would love to maybe work with who you've not had the chance to yet?
Well, my time here in OVW is two part. Obviously, I'm wrestling in the ring, but also coaching and helping things behind the scenes with Al Snow and his team here. So my time is kind of split. I'm kind of like a little bit of a player coach. Okay. And the one thing that I'm also really enjoying is just, I've had a career that spanned over 20 years so far, and I've, worked for Impact, worked for WWE. Mm-hmm. I've worked for, the multiple overseas tours for 2 or 3 different companies. I had a New Japan dojo stay when they were in LA originally. So I have a very experienced, if you want to call it, background in different companies and working with different styles and whatnot. So passing that down, if you want to call it that, or teaching that to the next generation of young talent and helping them trying to do something with it, or maybe succeed where I didn't, or grow beyond the limits that I found, or create opportunities for themselves is one thing that I'm really, really enjoying. And then also just also the challenges of the business aspect of it, the promoting and working within a television entity and everything else like that. But there's I think a very good core base of young talent here at OVW, and I say young, that they're a lot of them, I should say all of them, but a lot of them are they're in their 20s and they're still only a couple of years into the pro wrestling business, so they're very young in their careers. So watching them grow and see if they can maximize their potential or learn how to do that, A, will take time, but B, is very rewarding and a very cool process to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, You can, as you mentioned, you've been in all the major companies, Double Impact, and a 20-year veteran now. I can call you a veteran now, really. A vintage veteran who is still able to be a part of wrestling today, which is great. This is huge. But I mean, who's been your favorite opponent then to face so far?
Well, overall, it's a hard question. Like I've had the benefit of wrestling a lot of people, that I guess fans maybe not aware of. Where as far going back, wrestling someone like CM Punk and Kofi Kingston and Daniel Bryan, early in my career, and then you see where they ended up with their career, or even like a guy like Samoa Joe or Matt Sydal and Evan Bourne, Colt Cabana, these kind of guys. I've been in the ring with so many of them. And actually, as odd as it sounds, like sometimes I forget about a match. I'm like, oh yeah, I've wrestled him before, and then it comes back to me. But most recently, I really enjoyed a lot of the matches I had in Pro Wrestling Noah last year, particularly wrestling Sugiura one-on-one and Go Shiozaki one-on-one. And I got to wrestle Marufuji in a couple tag matches, and I'd love to face him one-on-one. I think it would be a very dynamic match with the styles difference that we have, the size difference that we have. So we'll see if that happens in the future. I know Impact has a good relationship with Noah, so maybe that door is open still, through relationships, and you never know what the future brings, and maybe we'll clash again.
Yeah, maybe, or even, of course, with MLW, they've got a great relationship with Pro Wrestling Noah as well. And I must say as well, Free Sports, every single Monday night on Free Sports, new episode of MLW Fusion. I believe it's the last episode from New York before they head over to Dallas after their TV tapings this past weekend. So tune in tomorrow night at 10 p.m. UK time on Free Sports. But back to yourself and about maybe going back to Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan. We asked this question to Ryan, but not about the Japanese audience, but we asked him about the Korean audience. But tell us about the differences between the Japanese audience to the American audience, because they're very different, aren't they? They're very quiet. They just clap when they're impressed by the action. More than
well, that's the main thing you'll notice too. I think without really understanding the language, they it's almost very much like going to a baseball game here in America, where it's not a very loud crowd. Typically here when you watch baseball, because you're allowing the pitcher the courtesy of focusing his pitch, and then you react when there's a hit or a good play. And it's similar in wrestling in Japan. And then they react to the bigger moments, or they'll applaud for a good match that was, and it's not because it was a good match. It was like they're applauding the effort, even if someone was defeated, or they're applauding that someone has finally overcome a rival, or that it was just a hard fought contest. Beyond that, what I mean is by with the language barrier, unless you really understand Japanese and their culture, and you speak the language, you might not necessarily understand their overall approach to pro wrestling. But a guy who can take a lot of punishment and still persevere is believed to have a lot of heart. That he will still be fighting up, is not going to succumb. And on the other side of that is, the guy that's strong enough and powerful enough to dish out a lot of punishment, as well as maybe take the punishment, is also kind of revered and cheered on because of his physical attributes, or his size and his strength. So it is a little bit of a different approach, and different things are appreciated, but it goes back to it's all pro wrestling.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it's good to have different cultures and to learn as well. you know what different countries do when they enter the ring, and how the crowd reacts to you, and if they get you in different in different places outside of the USA, which is quite good as well. Now, you've got an important there's an important card coming up on this Wednesday, September the 11th, I think it is. This coming Wednesday, you've got some great legends coming to OVW: Kevin Nash, Rhino, countless others. Will you be there?
I will be. It's actually a huge event in Louisville here, in one of the bigger entertainment districts. They call it 4th Street Live, which is kind of our it's actually huge for OVW, and just not only for pro wrestling. Like you mentioned, we'll have Kevin Nash here, Chavo Guerrero, Rhino, OVE or Sammy Callahan.
Oh God.
And I'm trying to think who else is there. Madison Rain, and then it will be myself and my partners and the LOB taking on King's Ransom and the Rock and Roll Express in an 8-man tag match. But not to make light of the matches and the guests, but being a huge thing here, OVW is shifting over to live TV now in a prime time weekday spot. So
That's
previously we had been taped television, and we would air Saturday morning and Saturday evenings here, which again are traditional pro wrestling spots, but the ratings have been garnering enough attention and rising enough that the television station WNBA offered us a primetime live spot. So going forward, a very cool thing for Ohio Valley Wrestling is that we will be, I think, the only company outside of WWE in pro wrestling to have live TV on a weekly basis. So it's kind of cool if you think about it, especially with all the else we have going on here. That's just another aspect of why things are really turning with a positive momentum here.
Yeah, and as Gilbert mentioned that on the podcast on Friday. Again, the link to that is in the description below of this YouTube video, if you want to listen to that podcast with Gilbert. And he also says, well, I think he said in the podcast that it will air on Thursdays, every single Thursday night, I think it is, in prime time on that channel. And also on Saturdays as well. It will still air on Saturdays if you miss it on the Thursday night time slots, because apparently Wednesdays are now too busy in the world of wrestling because of AEW and NXT going out.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. You're mistaken. We'll move in October. We will move to a Tuesday night.
Tuesday night. I knew it was either Thursday or Tuesday. I knew it was a T, but I thought it was Thursday. But thank you for correcting me there. But yeah, Tuesday nights.
No problem.
That's good. That's even better, isn't it? Tuesday night is not long to watch, and of course, there's nothing else on Tuesdays now, is there? There's no more SmackDown on Tuesdays in October, and definitely Wednesday nights is too much wrestling nowadays as well. Yeah. But yeah, it's going to be good. And of course, earlier today, as you mentioned before, you faced Samoa Joe as well. Earlier today, I saw a tweet with someone tagged you in about you being defeated by Samoa Joe at Bound for Glory a few years ago. How did that feel, being defeated, being embarrassed by everyone at the arena by Samoa Joe at Bound for Glory?
Well, I don't really call it being embarrassed, because when it comes down to it, they all still paid to see me do what I do in a ring. So win or lose, I don't really ever get embarrassed. But more so, that was a thought that was going through my mind, and I come across that old picture, and it just brought me back to that moment, to where, I kind of mentioned earlier, like, with being an Impact before in 2013, and then a little bit later on and off through the next couple years till about 2016 or so, kind of feels a little bit like unfinished business sometimes.
Yeah.
Is like I was in the Bound for Glory series, but then I just kind of vanished. Like, it seemed like there was a lot of like, again, turmoil within the company, of the direction of what wrestlers were doing what, and who was steering the ship essentially. So I got to thinking about that aspect after I viewed that. It's like, here I am, in a Bound for Glory series, which obviously didn't go very well for me. But because of that moment and being involved in that experience got me, a tour for Great Mutas Wrestle 1.
Wow.
And then because of that experience, I was able to, work with Impact on and off for the years that followed that, and then get opportunities with the NWA and recently and Pro Wrestling Noah. So my whole thought is like, yeah, I lost the match and things didn't go well for me in the Bound for Glory series, but like I was able to redirect and create other opportunities for myself to continue my career and continue learning and experience, other aspects of pro wrestling.
Yeah. And we'll come on to the other opportunities in a minute. We mentioned it before, but firstly, just tell my listeners and viewers where they can find you on social media, because my YouTube viewers can see your social media platforms right now. But for our listeners who can't see that, where can they find you on social media?
It's pretty easy. It's obviously the @ symbol or @ampersand, JAYBRADLEYPW. So it's J Bradley followed by PW, all one word, no spaces.
And that's on...
That's on Twitter, that's on Instagram, and Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook is just J Bradley on Facebook.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, there's no PW on that. There you go. I've done my research, so I know that. But if we just come back into the right view here, and we're going to me as well, you can see me again. Let's talk about then. Will we see you in the NWA when they come on TV in? I think it's in the next few weeks or so. Will you be a part of the TV taping? It's happening soon, or?
As of right now, I am not booked for the television taping. That's not to say it won't change or can't change. Obviously, I was part of the Crockett Cup event in the Wild Card Battle Royal, and I challenged Willie Mack for the North American title when he held that earlier this year. And I was even at the 70th anniversary event, which crowned the North American champion back almost a year ago, last October in Nashville. So yeah, I definitely have ties to the NWA. I've been involved with it since Billy Corrigan purchased the brand. Billy's an old friend of mine from Chicago, and I've worked with him on and off throughout my career, probably the last 10 years in various ways. I helped him, do some things behind the scenes and acquire the if you want to call it the assets or the title belts that were all the official NWA championship belts, and just do some groundwork for him as he was, purchasing the brand and seeing what he got and what the direction he was going to take it. But unfortunately, like I said, I'm not currently booked. I think there's some politics at play there, and I don't know that they favor me, unfortunately. So, if they got a spot for me or they want me there, I would be glad to be a part of something as cool as that. As the first TV taping for the NWA in how many years, I think would be something really awesome to experience. I'm interested to see how it's set up production-wise and how it's going to be formatted for studio-style taping and where it's going to be viewed at, like what outlets they're going to utilize. So yeah, it's something I would definitely love to be a part of. Unfortunately, right now, I still don't have a firm answer. So it could go either way. As pro wrestling, crazier things have happened. But if not, maybe something in the future or somewhere else in the future.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed for you to see what happens over the next few months. And maybe if you do get called up to go back to the NWA, maybe you can tell Billy Corrigan. Of course, he's the owner. Of course, he's also, many people may not know who he is. He's also a musician as well. He's a singer as well. So he's a very busy man, not just in wrestling, but outside of wrestling as well. But if you do see him again, tell him that he needs to get a UK deal here in the UK. because we want the NWA on TV here in the UK as well. You know, because they had Magnus, he didn't go by that name anymore, but I'm going to call him Magnus for this purpose. He was the world champion for the NWA, and it's quite hard to track him because there's no TV deal kind of thing, really, on YouTube and such. But I mean, his 4 matches, should be available over here on UK TV as well. So should be OVW. They should be on TV over here. So you need to speak to Al Snow and get us a TV deal over here in the UK. Because a lot of people know about OVW over here and would love to see OVW on TV over here.
Well, actually, if not to cut you off again, they've actually developed something that's pretty cool here. They actually, and I think it's kind of been pushed aside since so much else has been going on. They have an OVW network. Yeah. I want to say it's like $5 a month, and there's something like over 500 hours of pro wrestling through OVW that's just growing, by the week. All the television is up on it. It's all the Saturday night specials or some of the other special events that they put on over the years. And it's one of the fun things that we're doing is we're in the process of just developing it more, like to put some more exclusive content on there or exclusive matches. And again, I think Al and his team developed it with the international fan in mind that maybe can't get us, get it on TV here because of, the international restrictions or whatnot. But it's out there. I know there's a free trial with it, so if they want to, they can give it a shot.
There we go. Give it a free trial, and if you like it, then stick with it and support OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling in Louisville, Kentucky, as well. Now, let's talk about your relationship with Al Snow then, okay? Because you don't just handle him like in the ring; you handle him behind the scenes, as you said earlier on in this podcast. And how is your relationship with Al Snow? And do you class him as one of your good friends now?
Al's been a mentor of mine for probably over 10 years now, well over 10 years. I first met Al when I was in OVW, when I was under a WWE contract, and I got to work with him a lot as he was one of the head coach here for about a year. And then, they moved us on to, Florida, and my time with the company was cut shortly after that. But Al and I had always stayed in touch due to the fact that I think we have a lot of similar interests with, working out or comic books, movies, that sort of a thing. And then he was the person that gave me the gut check opportunity to get into Impact Wrestling initially. So obviously with that, I came back to OVW to work out and train here when I was with Impact full time, and got to work with them in that capacity again. And since then, he's just always been, a very mentor role to me, where I've taken ideas or concerns or questions related to pro wrestling, and brought it to him and kind of bounced ideas off of him or got his opinion and feedback, just because he's been around in the pro wrestling business almost longer than I've been alive, and has seen so much as far as, working in the office at Impact, as an agent with Impact, as a talent with WWE, and as a coach with WWE. The syndicate schools he's set up for himself through Europe that teach his ways or his philosophy towards the business, and even how he going back to how he started in pro wrestling with he has seen the business change or shift and whatnot in amazing ways through his career, and with that been able to influence a lot of talent, which I think is something very cool. So that's one thing I'm excited here for, again, is just to be able to work with him and allow this to grow through getting new talent to grow, because it's a very, use the word synergistic process to where if you start creating new talent or developing new talent, then the platform that they use will grow as well. And that platform right now is OVW.
Yeah, and so it'll be quite interesting to see him grow the company even bigger and better. He's going to start be doing that from, of course, October on Tuesday nights. So we look forward to seeing what he does from that, and hopefully turn it into a number 3 maybe company, maybe even into a number 2 company in years and years to come. But let's talk about you, and let's talk about what can we expect from you, Jay, over the next few months in OVW, or even anywhere, basically, because you are a free agent.
Well, OVW is currently the home base. I live in Louisville itself, so I'll stay active there, as both a coach within the trade school and as talent in the ring on the OVW events and television show. I'm currently a tag team champion. How long that'll last, you never know. It's pro wrestling. And with that being pro wrestling, you really never know where I'm going to wind up. Like I said, we've just, a lot of impact on here, and I have had some, talks with their management over the last few months. I've also talked to the guys at the NWA with Billy Corrigan over the last few months with business ideas. Same thing with MLW and Ring of Honor. And, I've kept good touch and on good terms with the guys over at Pro Wrestling NOAH. And I have friends over, in All Japan and other places. So, where I wind up, I think is the big question. And all I could say is, kind of wait and see, because that's what my thought process is, I think I bring a lot to the table experience-wise and as a talent, skill and ability-wise. So it's just a matter of, where does that piece fit a good puzzle? I don't want to get jammed in someplace or shoehorned in where there's not really a spot for you at the time and get pushed to the wayside. I think that's kind of what happened with Impact with me initially. Go somewhere where it's a good fit, professionally and as a wrestler, and hopefully flourish and keep my career going.
Yeah, exactly. And we look forward to it. And again, you can follow him on social media, where you can keep up with all the latest news regarding where he may be heading next, with, of course, with what he does in OVW as well. Now, is there anybody who you want to, what's the word I'm looking for, face next, really, in either, Impact or even in OVW, since they're both working together now?
I think that's kind of a very broad question, but there is some, I would like to get one-on-one with Rhino, which is a match that hasn't happened ever, which I think would be fun. I actually think there would be, from a story standpoint as well as a physical matchup, I think me and Brian Cage would be a lot of fun. Seeing just where he's gone with his career and the level he's on, but then if you want to go back and look at the story from 2013, how we were a gut check match against each other, and I really honestly thought they should have hired us both from the reaction the fans got with that match. It was very close and it was very split from what I understand. When he went on and did Lucha Underground and went to Mexico, and then obviously now he's in Impact, and you see he's flourished. There's a cool story there. I think that would be a hell of a match. Outside of Impact, I would like to get in there. Maybe if it's at MLW or it's at Pro Wrestling NOAH, I'd like to do something with Hammerstone, which I think would be another really interesting match. Is two heavyweights, but two slightly different styles of wrestling that are very good at what they do. I think would present some intrigue to the fans. So that's probably what I would say would be like my top 3 right now. We'll see who wants to put those matches on cards or who wants to make it happen, if anybody. Let's hope there is, because I think there's been some pretty strong reactions to when I've chatted with fans about it. or commented on Twitter about it when people have brought things up, and people have really had some strong words as far as wanting to see those matches with myself. So again, it's pro wrestling. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen. You got to keep your eyes peeled. But I'm hoping OVW or Impact make their matches happen. You got to make it happen. Realistically, make it happen. Think about not just the money you make, the attendance of the fans as well, and the energy and the chemistry between the wrestlers as well. For example, Rhino would never think.
Yeah, we'll see. Like I said, it's well. There's promoters out there, independent or major promoters like Impact or an MLW. So I think it's just a matter of are they listening to their fans, or do they think they can generate fan interest, which will obviously translate into views and hopefully dollars and cents, because it is a business when it gets down to it.
Absolutely it is. And it's been a pleasure having you on the show, Jay Bradley. Did you know we spoke for 46 minutes already? Doesn't feel like that, does it, really? It felt like more like 20 minutes, to be honest with you. but I mean, who, because you've been an expert now in loads of different companies, and who would you suggest me to contact next to come on this show?
Oh man, that's a hard question for me to answer. It really is.
To follow you after this show.
Oh wow.
Pressing the one button as well.
No, it's just like it's just there's just so many. I'm looking at it as such a broad question.
Yeah. Because you worked in so many different companies. You mentioned Japan. You mentioned many American companies as well, who you have the honor to be working in.
You know what? I'm gonna do a dark horse here, that maybe a guy here at OVW who I think is a really, really solid talent. And I mean, my solid is like, no matter what sort of match he's in or what sort of storyline he's in, he really does a good job with it. And I think I find him very entertaining and talented. That's Shiloh Jones.
Okay.
So it's someone that people might not know about.
Hey, that's good.
But he's been in OVW on and off for a number of years. He's very, very, and I don't mean to make it sound downplay, but he's very proficient at so many things in pro wrestling, and like I said, so many roles I've seen him evolve in and out of, and so many different style of matches, whether it's a comedy match or if it's a serious match or tag match or whatnot. He seems to do very well in all of them and just give consistently good matches. I think he's a guy who doesn't probably get enough love from the fans, just simply that he's kind of not on their radar. And I think if people watch him, they'll be entertained.
I like it. And as you say as well about he may not be very well known, exactly that, and this is a platform to hopefully to give him some exposure as well, and to hopefully give him some more some new fans look at his work as well, and that's a good what's the word looking for, suggested to bring on the show. I'm definitely going to contact him here in a few days, so we're going to bring him on the show. Hopefully, if he accepts to come on the show, I'll get OVW Media Relations to get a hold of him, to get me in contact with him, since we've got a great relationship with OVW as well with MLW. Of course, our two major homes, and again, Impact Wrestling. We've contacted Impact Wrestling, we've contacted All Elite Wrestling, got no response from them both yet. So have I got your attention yet? If not, you need to do business with me, believe me. But yeah, I wish you luck for Wednesday night. Of course, it's gonna be a great event, and hopefully you win your 8-man tag match on Wednesday night.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Just stay on the phone for a minute. I want to discuss something else with you. If you are, by the way, if you're a first-time viewer here on the Fowler Show, so thank you for tuning in on our official YouTube channel, or if you listen to the whole thing on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, thank you so much. But if you want to see the video format of this, go to youtube.com/Edward Fowler to see myself and Jay Bradley in the flesh, as they say. And as well, in the coming episodes, you will see that Twitter thing on the show more often, because we want your opinions, we want your tweets on the screen as you send them in. So if you want to send a tweet to us, feel free to use a hashtag, The Fowler Show, live on youtube.com, every time we do a live podcast. So what we're going to do right now here is the next episode will drop on tomorrow, which is Monday, which will be Tyson Ducks. Canadians' own Tyson Ducks comes out tomorrow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify at 6 a.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. UK time. So look out for that one tomorrow on Apple and Spotify, only on The Fowler Show. Jay Bradley, it's been a pleasure again to have you on the show. Until the next episode drops, enjoy the rest of morning, night, evening, or